Hello everyone, welcome back to the shop. Today we are continuing our series on making mokume. This is part 2 in the video series. If you haven't watched part 1, I'll put a link to it in the description below. If you're watching into the future and you want to skip ahead, part 3 and 4 will be in the description below. And I just thank you guys for watching this series. Hopefully this will help you all out. Today we are going to be going over the actual forging and the initial weld up of the mokume. Thank you all for watching. Okie doke everyone, here we are at the vise. Well, 2 vices. What I've done with this portable vise, this is a vise I believe I've got from Harbor Freight. And I mean, it's just a cheap vise. I wouldn't suggest doing this with good vices. I would always suggest to do it with something from Harbor Freight or Tractor Supply, or something that didn't cost you a whole lot of money, something you find at a yard sale, something like that. But main purpose is because you're going to be heating this material up and the jaws are going to get soft. So a lot of guys, like, you will do this if you've got a forge or something of that nature. You'll have to do some sort of clamp and then set it up right and balance it in the forge and do all this stuff. I found the easiest way to take and make this is with a torch. I run an oxy-propane torch to do this. And it goes pretty well. In the other video I told you not to touch this. Obviously I've been touching it. It's okay, it's on the outside here. You don't want to handle the in-between surfaces with your fingers, once again for the oils. It just takes and allows more inclusions and things like that. So the reason why I do this in the vise is I use the vise as a sort of press to take and squeeze the coins together. As mentioned in the first video, you're not trying to hammer the heck out of this and get metal to go squirting out. You want that molten metal to stay between the layers and fuse the actual stack together. So that's what we're going to be doing today, is we're going to be trying to get fusion. You're not trying to get a weld, you're trying to get fusion. So I get my torch set up here, and I'll show you what I mean. So I've got this locked in here pretty tight, but what you'll see me do as we go along here is I will actually, let's see if we can get my gases going here. As the billet condenses, I will have to take and keep squeezing that vise a lot tighter together. Another thing to note, you do not use any flux when doing mokume. Flux just gets in there. You don't need the capillary action of the flux. All it does is get into the welding surfaces and mess them all up, and you just end up getting more inclusions. So I've got a pretty soft flame here right now. What we're wanting is a neutralized flame if we can. We don't want an oxygenated flame. You want to try to get as neutral of a flame as you can get. And we're just going to heat this billet up. So, as you can see, this vise is going to take some heat just by the fact of it taking and being heated with the torch here. One thing I'll point out, when you're doing this, the coins here on the end will not fuse. And the reason for that being is the heat's being sucked out of them. They never do quite get up to welding temp because the jaws are taking and sucking the heat out of the billet. So you want to take your time and heat these coins up nice and evenly. And I hope you can see this on the camera real well. We're getting up to heat. You're going to start seeing the coins turn orange, a dull red in color, then orange, and then they'll get a little brighter, and then all of a sudden it'll look like the surface of the coins are getting wet. And that's how you know that it's at the fusion point where you can fuse the coins together. Any point until then, they're not ready to weld. So we're just going to heat this right on up. Starting to look really good. Take your time with it. It's worth taking time to do. Don't overheat it. You don't want it to melt away. You just want it to start fusing together. So we're going to heat this up here and keep going. So this video is in real time. I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. I don't want to speed this process up because, well, it just takes what it takes, guys. You want Mokume, you're going to go through the process of time to do it right. You don't want to take the time to do it right, don't do it at all. That's my opinion. Now you can see it's starting to get pretty hot. Right now it's at a nice bright orange color. I'm starting to get some bubbles and some crackling out, some different color change of the copper. The surface is starting to look wet, which is good. That's what we want. I got a few bubbles starting on some places. I'll start giving it a bit of a squeeze. We just want this to come up hot enough. You don't want to burn it, you just want the whole billet to get nice and greasy looking. We'll just keep heating it here. Keep heating it. That center's really getting good. Really getting a lot of mileage out of that center. Just takes time. Just takes time. So, we're going to heat it up. Keep heating it real good. We'll be there eventually. Now I'm starting to get some liquid transfer here and the color is changing. So that means the copper's starting to melt in with the nickel. And we're starting to be able to compress these layers together, which is good. I made one full rotation already with the handle of the vise. Bringing thin layers together. As long as you keep this nice and hot, it will compress together and make a nice consolidated billet. It takes a little time, but you'll get it there. Just give it time. You want to give it a good squeeze. Let this all start coming together. Take your time with it, guys. I'm adjusting the flame a little hotter here, trying to get go a little quicker on them. That way you don't have so much dead air space to watch. You see the coin starting to get liquidy? That's what you're wanting. Wanting all the coins to start melting and floating together for proper fusion. After this initial weld, you'll want to soak it once it cools down Once it cools down enough, you'll want to soak this in acetone before you do your next forging process. That way you can clean out any gaps that may be there, so when you make your next forge weld, it'll weld up nice and clean. We're just keeping the heat on this, keeping it nice and hot. Trying to weld in these ends. And what I may do is I may go ahead and come back to you after I got this completely welded here. But you guys get the idea. And see how quickly this billet is reduced. And I'm really keeping these quarters up enough from the top of series. I think most of those are fused. So what I will do now is I will wait for that to cool down naturally with pressure. Once it's cooled down with pressure, you go ahead, once it gets all the way cooled all the way down to where you can, it's like a black heat there, guys. Once it's, that's right there, that's fused. Once it cools down to a black heat, you take it out of the vise, cool it down in some water, and then go ahead and take it over to your acetone again. At this stage, you can wire wheel it up if it has any heavier scale on it, which it shouldn't. It should just kind of have a very light oxidation on it that can be cleaned up with the acetone. But you want to go ahead and before you go to the next process, to go ahead and take time to clean it again. Because if you can see, I'll walk over here again. If you can see, well, I'll just use my finger here or something to point this out. These here along these edges, they're not fused in. Not yet anyhow. So you can still see that it's got a lot of texture here. You can still see that they're individual coins. What we want to do is, until those things have fused into the surface, you want to keep them as clean as possible. So we're going to take a welding heat on this after I get it all cleaned back up and soaked in the acetone and all that good stuff. And once it's all good to go, we'll take and come back and we will go ahead and stick it in the main gas forge and we'll bring it out and we'll do a forge welding heat then. Bring it up to a nice forge welding heat. And then I'm actually, as a bonus from a subscriber request, I'm going to go ahead and do this under the Hardy hammer to take and forge this down a little better. You don't have to do that. This is Mokume. Once again, it's a soft metal. So you can consolidate this real easy with a hand hammer. I'm just going to do it with the Hardy hammer since I got it. But anyways, that's enough for me chatting on this part here. I will go over into the next clip. In the next clip, we'll have this in the forge. And it'll already all be cleaned up and everything. We'll have this in the forge and we'll be taking it for its next go. But as you can see, there's nothing magical about this. It's just bringing it to the correct temperature and using pressure to fuse the pieces together. So I hope this helps out, especially Twan over at Warp Legacy. He was nice enough to take and make me a Mokume pendant. I'll try to put a link to his video up in the little card here and in the description if you want to go check that out. He kind of struggled a bit. It was his first time making Mokume, and I just wanted to kind of just do another video for him as well. Maybe he'll glean some tips and help on that. Real funny guy. You ought to check out his channel. But anyways, I'll be back once this is clean and we'll do some forging. Alright guys, quick clip. I just thought to myself, hey, I didn't show these guys the rest that this actually forged, and it didn't look like it had forged much or had fused together in the video, of me being over the vise. So I figured I'd just give you a quick clip. These are stuck together. So for all the naysayers that said, he didn't actually get that to weld, it's welded together. It's stuck. So just heat and pressure. Pretty simple. It really takes out the complexity of trying to get all those layers together, and makes it pretty slick. So anyways, I'm going to take this, put it in my acetone solution, and let that eat out all that scale and get it cleaned up from anything, and then we'll be back over at the forge and work. One last thing before I change over to the forging clip. When you're doing coins, okay, Damascus is done in layers. Well, so is Mokume, okay? But what you have to understand is coins are plated in nickel with copper cores. So you have 2 nickel layers and 1 copper layer. So when you're counting layers, each coin is 3 layers. Something to keep in mind there. Now, that's a bit divided in half because if you think about it, you're going to stack a nickel to nickel, essentially. So those are going to get taken off. So essentially you can count just about each coin is 2 layers in of itself, by my count. I may be wrong, math majors may prove me wrong, but with the copper core and 2 nickel halves going together, it makes 3 layers in total in that joint plus 2. So hope that helps you guys. That math sounds screwy. I don't know. I'm on camera. But, you know, you guys can correct me in the comment section. I'm sure somebody will. But that's just something to keep into effect. You know, it doesn't count. I count this as 2 layers, essentially. Because every coin is 2 layers. That's how I see them. So keep that in mind when you're trying to do your count. So if you're trying to have low layer counts, you're going to have to start with bigger coins, maybe $50 or something like that. I believe they're made up of the same thing as like a quarter. Or if you're actually working with nickel sheet and copper, you know, you want lower layer counts, you can obviously control that. But with coins, you really can't. You're kind of at a cross. You're going to have a high layer count because you're trying to get enough material depending on what you're doing. The material that I'm doing here is actually going to get thinned out quite a bit because once again it's going to become an inlay into the cross that I'm building. So anyways, hope that helps. I'll be back to you in a bit. Alright everyone, I'm in here at the shop. See here, I got the coins, if you will, the Mokume billet fused. It's in the gas forge heating up. The important thing when you're heating the Mokume is to bring it up to the point that it just starts to get molten, that it just starts to run together. You don't want to take it past that. You want fusion, you don't want to melt it to a blob in the middle of your fire. So you got to keep checking it regularly. I'm going to come over to the Hardy hammer here and come underneath the dies, and I'm going to consolidate this billet some more. So it's about up to heat. Start to get liquefied. I'm going to wait until it gets just a little more here. I'm running an oxygen neutral flame in the forge. Start to run. And we're going to come out for our first heat. Right now. Turn it up on in like this and hammer it down a little, roll it, and try to square it up a little bit. And start really working that coin pattern back into itself. So I'll go ahead and take another heat on this and do exactly that. work it out by hand hammer just fine. Just keep your blows steady and even. Try not to blow out to one side or the other. Just keep it nice and even when you're hammering. So we'll go ahead and get this good and hot, and I'll be back to you in the next clip here. Okay, this is the second heat. It's getting good and liquefied now. I'll go ahead and take this next heat here. Take it nice and easy with it. Roll it up. Still hot enough to pour. Just trying to take the square. Now we'll go back to the flat. And we're going to keep cleaning up this shape. So essentially I'm going to keep cleaning this shape up until I get it good to go. I left it in the forge a little long here, and you can see the you can see where it started melting too much. So we're going to take and fix that. For the next heat, hammer it in a little bit. That'll all get ground out in the final product. But so I'll take another heat. We'll go ahead and do some more manipulate. Go ahead and forge this into a bit of a cube, and then that'll be the end of this part of the series. You'll have to go to part 3, and then part 3 we will do pattern manipulation. So we'll take another heat on this and get to it. Alright, this is the third heat. We're going to get it stood up on end and work that little bad end into it. Lay it down. Gonna keep working this. Alright. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. Pull my power hammer die up out of the way here. So, right now we essentially got a puck of material, guys. Essentially I'm going to work this a little more, and then in part 3 of this video series I'll actually show you how we're going to do one form of pattern manipulation on this. Anyways, thanks guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give it a like, give it a comment, give it a subscribe. We'll catch you on the next one.